The purpose of this video is to demonstrate and analyze a barbell front squat to push press. The different types of contractions will be observed, as well as the main muscles involved in each part of the movement. This video will be a helpful reference for the layperson, as well as someone specialized in the field. Here is the full movement in motion before we get into its separate components. In the starting position, the barbell is held by the hands in a pronated position, commonly known as an overhand grip. The feet should be parallel to each other, slightly wider than shoulder width apart, and with slight external rotation. This movement can be divided into two main phases. Phase 1 consists of a squat, and Phase 2 consists of a barbell press, also referred to as the overhead or military press. Each phase can then be further divided into two separate sections, the eccentric and concentric parts of the squat, which are the lowering phase and the lifting phase respectively, and the concentric and eccentric parts of the shoulder press, which are the lifting phase to full overhead position and the lowering phase respectively. We will refer to these further phases as parts A and B. To analyze the distinct phases, it is important to note that the muscles of the abdominals, lower back, wrist, and hands are in constant isometric contractions throughout the entire movement, contracting in order to stabilize the trunk as well as preventing the barbell from falling. Although these muscles are not directly associated with the force generated for the movement, they are as equally important. The spine should be kept in a normal, neutral alignment in order to avoid injury. Phase 1. Phase 1 is a closed kinematic chain exercise because the feet are firmly planted on the ground. Phase 1 Part A consists of hip flexion, knee flexion, and ankle dorsiflexion. The combination of these movements creates the overall action of lowering the body in a squatting position. Note that in order to concisely study phase 1 of the movement, it is assumed that no movement is taking place in the upper part of the body, although isometric contractions are taking place in order to keep these areas stable and maintain positioning. For hip flexion, the hip extensors are used in an eccentric contraction, which include the gluteus maximus and a group of muscles collectively known as the hamstrings, made up of the semimembranosus, semitendinosus, and biceps femoris. For knee flexion, the knee extensors are used in an eccentric contraction. These include the rectus femoris, vastus medialis, vastus intermedius, and vastus lateralis, a group of muscles known as the quadriceps. For ankle dorsiflexion, an eccentric contraction of the plantar flexors takes place by the gastrocnemius and soleus. In Phase 1, Part B, all the same muscles of Part A are used, but this time contracting in a concentric fashion. That is, they are shortening while overcoming gravity and resistance. This means that the muscles perform the opposite movements of Part A, and in their entirety lift the body while in a squatting position. Therefore, the movements taking place in Part B are extension of the hip, extension of the knee, and plantar flexion of the ankle. All of the movements in Phase 1 take place in the sagittal plane about the frontal axis. This concludes Phase 1. Phase 2. Phase 2 is an open kinematic chain exercise. Phase 2, Part A, consists of elbow extension, shoulder flexion, and shoulder girdle upward rotation and elevation. These individual actions create the entire movement of lifting the barbell overhead. For extension of the elbow extensors, triceps brachii and anconeus are contracting concentrically. To flex the shoulder, the clavicular head of the pectoralis major, the anterior deltoid, the coracobrachialis, and biceps brachii, which are the shoulder joint flexors, are contracting concentrically. In the shoulder girdle, the scapula assists in the motion by providing upward rotation and elevation through the shoulder girdle upward rotators and elevators, which are the trapezius, levator scapulae, and serratus anterior. These same muscles provide the opposite movements for Part B of Phase 2. However, if a muscle group performed a concentric contraction, now it will perform an eccentric contraction, and vice versa. This creates the movement of lowering the barbell back to starting position. So, the joint movements taking place are elbow flexion, shoulder extension, and shoulder girdle downward rotation and depression. All of the movements in Phase 2 take place in the sagittal plane about the frontal axis, with the exception of downward rotation of the scapula, which occurs in the frontal plane about the sagittal axis. This concludes Phase 2. This video was narrated by Jonathan Martinez, member of the Humerus. Special thanks are given to R.T. Floyd, author of Manual of Structural Kinesiology, 19th edition, which is where all this information was synthesized from. Special thanks are also given to Visible Body for providing the 3D models of the muscles and skeleton. Thank you very much.